like clockwork, we've reached October and we've got a new FIFA game out that's ready to absolutely rinse our wallets out of any cash that we might have. And despite numerous occasions where I thought I could go without for the year, I've ended up being a fucking mug and buying it anyway. I do so probably just because I'm so used to having a FIFA game there, new, this time, every year. And the idea, as someone that has loved FIFA for the majority of my life and loves football, of not having it is just so alien to me. So I buy it pretty much every year, despite falling out of love with it, in the hope that it might improve or might be better in any way, shape or form, and that EA might actually change in some respect. Obviously, this is quite frankly delusional, and I can't even really blame EA, because in this case, they laid it out pretty much from the off of how this game was going to be. However, having played it, you really get a sense of just how pointless the release of FIFA 23 feels like. I don't necessarily want to say that because it really falls into the opinion of many who perhaps don't like sports games or don't like sports and stay away from the genre of the games altogether, who always bring out the trope that they're the same game every year, blah, blah, blah. Of course, in reality, sports games aren't always the same every year. You would have to play one from one year to the other to really appreciate any changes that are made. And yes, from the outside, you look at FIFA 22, say, you see some people playing football. You look at FIFA 23, you see some people playing football. If you look at it in that sort of really simple view, okay, yeah, it looks like the same game. However, there are obviously, for the most part, I should say, in sports games, differences that do tell each other apart. And that's not necessarily to say that FIFA 23 is just like a copy of FIFA 22. Of course, the Nintendo Switch version is, because why they keep releasing that, I don't know. It's a massive middle finger, but clearly people are still buying it. For example, with FIFA 23, at least so far, because let's face it, they will patch it, I don't mind the gameplay at all. I actually think the gameplay is relatively fun. It feels relatively fun to me. That might be unpopular, that might not be. I don't actually know. I haven't really looked at other people's views on this. But for me, the game has been fun to play for the most part. Now, like I say, I do have issues with that because every year the game has had good gameplay. EA go and put a patch out that ruins it. So I am expecting that at some point. However, for now, I actually like the gameplay. I like the fact that corners have sort of gone back to what they were when I first started playing FIFA, where you sort of you see the bend and the trajectory of the corner, and you can sort of put it where you want to, as opposed to last year's system where you'd have that little spot, you'd put it where you want to, and the ball would just yeet out somewhere else. The corners are better, the set pieces are better, the gameplay just feels all right. I can't say anything more than that, and I'm not necessarily going to attack that side of it. However, when we come to new features on FIFA 23, that's where the real issues lie. And to be honest with you, can't really blame anyone but myself for buying the game, because to be honest with you, when they were announcing things, they sort of laid it out in the open then. But in terms of new features, there really is bugger all across the whole of FIFA 23. Now, normally in the last sort of decade or so, in the time where FIFA has, in my view at least, gradually declined every year, there's always been at least one or two modes that still get a bit of attention. Normally it's career mode and pro clubs that miss out entirely. Career mode might get a little bit here and there. Pro clubs, I mean, they've left that to die. However, there's always at least something, whether it be the introduction of Volta, admittedly no one really cares for it, but that was a new mode and big feature really. And then Ultimate Team, of course, gets a lot of attention. There's always something that they look at. With FIFA 23 though, looking around, and granted, I'm not much of an Ultimate Team player, so correct me if I'm wrong. However, Ultimate Team, Pro Clubs, Volta, which are now together for some reason, Career Mode, across the board, there doesn't seem to be that much at all in the way of new features. Ultimate Team has a new sort of chemistry now, which it seems like one of those changes that are just a little bit pointless. I don't know if it will balance things out in the end. The old system of chemistry where you just have a plain old number up to 100 and the more chemistry you had, the better, seemed a lot more simple than the intricate out of 33 that seems to be there now. But even Ultimate Team hasn't had that much of anything. There is then career mode, which they seem to alternate between caring about. This year it's the player career mode. That's had a few little things. You've now got like this sort of personality tree where you can sort of go down a route of how you want your player to act, I suppose. Manager career mode got a new menu. Yeah. They actually did brag about that as if it was something worth bragging about. However, a menu is not a feature. It is not something that should be on their main career mode new feature video that they put out, where they're really proud of themselves that they've made a new menu that has tiles just in a slightly different way. It is not worth bragging about in the slightest. Now, I haven't touched too much of pro clubs. However, I can see that they've bagged it with Volta in an attempt to probably make Volta, actually looked at. Because beforehand, I'll be honest, I don't know anyone that actually cared for it. So yeah, they baggaged Volta X Pro Clubs. That's the title of it. And Pro Clubs itself has had, and as you'd probably guess, bugger all, like it has for about 10 years now. Crossplay's in the game, but not for Pro Clubs, which is just idiotic. But they seem committed to putting a nail in, as many nails as possible into that coffin. But it's still there, I suppose, so that's positive. Something else I did want to just mention here as well is the introduction of women's leagues for the first time. This was obviously when this was first announced. Brilliant. Great idea. However, my worry always was that in what degree will they be in the game? Because I think back to 2015 when they announced the international teams and they had that Women's International Cup that they threw in. It felt like a massive token gesture where they were just doing it for the sake of it. They were doing it to get some good PR, some good marketing. Oh, look at us, we're being inclusive. And then they did not touch that to this day. It is still the same little tournament on its own where you just play as the 12 or so teams that are on the game. And that's it. That has not been touched at all since that date. And with the leagues, I was concerned that the league would just be in there as a kickoff or tournament. And heaven behold, it was just a kickoff and tournament. And it was only 2 leagues. I was hoping there would be at least 3 or 4. I didn't expect, look, I'm a realist. I didn't expect there to be many. But I thought the US could get in there because the US is actually way out up in front in terms of women's football. Maybe Spain, maybe Germany. So you'd have the 4 biggest, as far as I'm aware. I mean, if there's another league out there that I'm missing that is supposedly as big as those, I'm very sorry. But the point is, they could have done a little bit more, in my opinion. They could have made more attention to it. They could have brought it into career mode, have its own little bubble where you can move between men's teams and then women's teams, just to give it a little bit more something. People aren't going to pay much attention to the WSL and the French division when it's just a tournament. They're just not. People don't really play the tournaments these days. Well, as far as I'm aware, there'll obviously be some people out there that do, but they're just not. They're not at the forefront of the game. They're tucked away, and yet they make a big song and dance about this. I guarantee you they will not touch it at all forever, pretty much. They may, in the next few years, add 1 or 2 more divisions. That will be it. There will not be any more attention put onto this because it is just, for them, I generally believe they are pretty much evil and they will only do this for the good PR. That is it. In terms of the one thing that they seem to be selling quite heavily throughout the marketing before the game and even on like the store pages, 2 World Cups. I can't help but feel that is their big selling point of this game, and that is it. The fact they've got the 2 World Cups coming up. So you got the Men's World Cup in November, and then later down the line you got the Women's World Cup. And I think they will make a big deal of this for multiple reasons. One, it is literally the only thing they've really got, as we've gone over. There's bugger all in this game. And 2 is, of course, the end of their partnership with FIFA. There's a good chance that World Cups will never be touched by EA again, not in terms of the fully licensed shebang. So I think they're going to make a big deal out of the World Cups for those two reasons. However, even in that sort of makes me laugh a little bit that they're like, we got 2 World Cups in the same game. Unbelievable. You're going to get this free update. I still can't help but think back to 2014 and before that, 2010, 2006, blah, blah. They had their own games. And quite often these games were some of the best FIFAs I remember playing. The 2014 game was brilliant. I loved the way that game played and I loved the feel of it. 2010 was very similar. 2006 was very similar. And here we are now, them celebrating what will be an incredibly bare bones World Cup mode, a little bit of an Ultimate Team extension. That's it. And they pile this off as, oh, it's free. I mean, when you spent about anywhere between 60 to 80 pounds or more maybe on the game, depending on what version you got, where you got it from, etc., you'd probably expect a little bit more, in my opinion. I mean, you used to be able to get the World Cup games for around 30 quid. I know it was technically buying 2 games, but the product was worth that. In terms of modes from those games, such as the sort of World Cup journey, I can't remember what it was exactly called, but the sort of journey to the World Cup mode, where you could be any team that have registered with FIFA. You could be San Marino, you could be Haiti, you could be Samoa, you could get Scotland to the World Cup. That would be bizarre, wouldn't it? You could take these little nations. Of course, you could take your home nations as well. Whoever. You take whoever in the world that was a registered national team with FIFA, and you could take them to the World Cup. That was brilliant. Utterly brilliant. Like, I had so many good memories on that mode. And yet nowadays, we're just left with what is something that is incredibly bare bones, and we're meant to lap it up like it's brilliant. It just doesn't sit right. It really doesn't. And it's a shame that we will never get a game like that again. I'm sure they have their reasons. They probably didn't sell very well. People didn't want to buy 2 games. They might be right, I don't know. But for me, it's a shame because those games were so in-depth and they covered the World Cup brilliantly and they were so fun to play. Some of the best FIFA games outright, never mind the mainstream releases. So I guess my point to making this is that if you haven't got FIFA yet and you're really umming and ahhing, maybe consider not getting it, or at least waiting until it's cheaper. You won't miss out too much. The gameplay is the opinion on gameplay can swing so easily and so dramatically between player to player. So the fact that I don't mind the gameplay is no guarantee that you won't. The lack of features just isn't worthwhile. And with the big change coming next year where it's going to become EA Sports FC, you could probably put your money on them going a bit bigger for that. And I really hope they will. It's like, it seems pointless putting any faith in EA at this point. But I think where it's got their own brand attached to it and there's more risk to them directly, I think they will probably put a lot more care into it. They sort of sold this as going to be the biggest FIFA to date, even when all the news came out about their split with FIFA. That couldn't be more bollocks if they tried. It is nowhere near. It's quite lacking and it feels like a placeholder game. And that's why, ultimately, FIFA 23 is utterly pointless.